Hello, everybody. We're very excited for today's session because today we are going to have two very special guests from likely one of the most important agencies that work in our fields worldwide. They are experienced speakers, but they are also very experienced listeners. And this is all about, we're going to talk today during this session. I had the chance and the opportunity to read this amazing book, which is called Adaptive Listening. And we here at MLC, we found it extremely interesting because for the first time ever, in my opinion, it is shifting the perspective from how we talk, how we give the speech, how we give the presentation, to how we listen and how we need the others to listen to us. This is something that especially nowadays, with the hype of artificial intelligence, I personally find very relevant, and therefore I couldn't wait to be in touch with Nicole and Maegan, and I can't wait to have this conversation with them. So I would say, please let's invite Nicole and Maegan to join me. So Nicole and Maegan, I see you girls are already here. Hello, girls.
Hello.
Good day.
Nice to be with you.
Welcome to join. Oh, I can see the adaptive listening there as well.
Always got to have it on display.
I'm very pleased to have you here today, and I can't wait to start talking about adaptive listening. So let's warm things up. We start immediately, and I would start from you, girls. We know you are experienced speakers. You've been delivering trainings, helping people worldwide and leaders giving better talks. But now also you're teaching them how to listen. What I find extremely interesting is also, and very curious, is that you are also colleagues. So you're colleagues, you work together, then you decide to co-author a book. I mean, this story is amazing. So I'm going to just shut up and listen, because I think listening is the keyword today. So up to you. Tell us more about you.
Yeah, let me give you a little bit of the origin story. And like most things, it has a lot of little tiny origins that you don't really realize till you look back and go, oh my gosh, of course this was meant to be. Of course this was going to happen. So Nicole and I met a little over 8 years ago. We work at Duarte, which is a communication firm and training agency based in the Bay Area in California. And we were working as speaker coaches at the time, helping train people, much like you, to give better presentations, because the world needs better presentations. And we always talked about ourselves at Duarte as a communication firm. But one day, Nicole and I were leading a training, and in between the breaks said, don't you think it's funny? We call ourselves communication, but we don't do listening, which is the whole other half of communication. Like, wow. And it just kind of sat there like 8 years ago. And then fast forward, and Nicole and I work on the agency side of the business, where we work with clients who have big, important messages to deliver, big main stage keynotes or big change initiatives with inside their organization. So we're in client calls all of the time, trying to listen to what the client needs. And I remember the day I left a client call where I had a salesperson with me, or an account director, and we debriefed on what we heard in that call. And we walked away with wildly different interpretations of what happened in that call. And I thought, oh my God, were you even listening? I don't understand. You heard things. I know you weren't multitasking. I know you took notes, but we didn't leave the same way. So that was another little nugget. And then the final one was when the pandemic hit in 2020. Nicole and I were very sad. We are used to interacting and being on planes and meeting with people. And so I sent her a text message one day and was like, hey, let's build a course about listening as just a thing to bring joy to our lives in a time where we're sad. I mean, we're nerds. What brings me joy? Helping people be better communicators. And so with that, we kicked off a secret project that we didn't even tell our CEO, Nancy Duarte, about, trying to build something that we thought was good enough to bring to her and pitch to her. And eventually we did. And she goes, whoa, there's a lot here. Keep going, ladies. And she gave us permission to use our work days to fill this out. So that's the long, many little pieces of how our worlds collided to get us to adaptive listening.
Okay, that sounds very interesting also because I don't know, Nicole, if you wanted to add something before I.
No, I think Maegan covered it. There are many nuances to the origin of adaptive listening, and I think she covered all of them. So yes.
What I find extremely interesting is that everything started by observing what was going on real projects, and probably what really hits my attention is that the way it started was probably by listening. Listening probably to your clients or to your coaches, people you were training, and these made you collect all the nuggets and then gave you inspiration. I find it also extremely interesting the fact that within the company the potential has been perceived, and you've been given the time, the energies, the resources to actually bring it to life, because I know what it takes to bring a book to life, especially when you are inventing a new framework, you are basing it on real stories. And this is something I really wanted to add by reading the book. One of the very interesting parts is that it's rich. It's rich with stories. It's full of stories. You share real situation, real case scenarios, and these are very interesting for the readers because I think you can feel part of it and you can relate to the stories. You can see how your framework adapts and applies to the different situations. So I think it's very interesting as well, and you can really perceive that it was coming it is coming from real life experience. The fact that it comes from real life experience gives it let's say solidity, okay, solid foundation. So very interesting. There is a difference that you mentioned in the book, especially at the beginning, because we were used to listen, to know this active listening approach, right? But instead of active listening, now thanks to your contribution, we are shifting to adaptive listening. So would you like to comment on that? What is the difference between active listening, right, and adaptive listening, and how this adds up?
Yes, first we will say we are fans of active listening. We think there is an appropriate place for active listening in the workplace. But when Maegan and I were doing our research to see, well, what exists out there as a model for listening before we delve into making our own, we found that, yes, active listening is the thing that most people subscribe to. However, most people don't know that it was created in the 1950s for therapists and counselors. It was not created for our hectic, busy back-to-back work days. And so when it was developed for counselors and therapists, it was centered around this thing called understanding for total meaning. So certain principles of active listening are summarize, or don't interrupt, don't judge. Well, when Maegan and I think about our day-to-day jobs, we do all of those things. We are paid as speaker coaches to judge other people's performance and other people's writing. There is a place for that in the corporate world. If we were to take the principle of summarizing every conversation, boy, would our work life slow down. There's just not always an appropriate time to summarize everything that's said. Interrupting can sometimes help the flow of a brainstorm. Like, we have examples of when Maegan and I are constantly interrupting each other because that makes sense for the goal of that interaction. So we just thought, well, there are some things here that fit, but there are other things that aren't quite working for us in this environment. The baseline is pay attention, right? Nod your head. Don't pick up your phone. Don't multitask. Pay attention. We believe in that, in those principles when it comes to active listening, but we think that we can do better. We think there is a time when interruption makes sense. We think there is a time when judgment makes sense. And so we thought, how can we come up with a model where we give the person speaking what they need in that moment? Maybe it is not speaking, but maybe it is interrupting in some cases. And so we took a look across the board at what does the situation need? What does the speaker need? Is active listening cutting it? Sometimes. So we knew we needed to come up with something better and something different.
It's very curious, the fact that sometimes we give for granted the people are listening to us. And sometimes we give for granted that we are able to listen to them.
Indeed.
But it's not granted at all. It's more difficult than it looks like. For example, there is a mid part, but I don't want to spoil anything in the book, in which you tell us how our lens, our listening capabilities can be impacted by many things. Okay, not just the phone notification or an email popping up or a Teams message, but there is much more than that, and it relates to people. Because at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about, and I find this very interesting. But as I said, I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a point, something that you just mentioned, Nicole, that make me very curious, which is sometimes we say that listening goes beyond paying attention, right? It includes the way we respond, but also you say something that I find very interesting, which is listener should listen to what hasn't been said. So what does that mean? I mean, how can I listen to what hasn't been said?
Let me give you an example. I was working with a client where I was helping him craft a really, really high stakes strategic framework that he had to deliver to his team. This is a Fortune 50 brand, big deal. He's the head of a department. My job is to come in, listen to him, and write it all down for him and give it back. Well, one day I show up to the meeting and he goes, Maegan, I think I figured it out. I wrote it all last night. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's my job, man. You hired me to write this thing, but you did it last night. And I had to stop him. And I went, hey, I love it. You want to read it to me? What do you want me to do when you're done? What are you looking for here? You want me to tell you yes or no? You want me to add on to it? Or do you think this thing is over with? And you should just go ahead and ship it. It's done. And he stopped and went, whoa, I don't even know what I want. Whoa, I hadn't even thought about what I want from you. To me, that's a really great example of me listening to what was not said. He didn't tell me what he wanted, but I could read his body language. He was really excited to show me something. He felt energized that he cracked the code. And I had to read those cues and go, well, man, what's my job in this room now? It's not what I walked into this meeting thinking my job was. My job has just changed. And this is before Nicole and I had brought adaptive listening out. And we were in the very early days, but I was cognizant enough in the moment to go, ooh, I should double check what my job is here now if he did that. I think that's a really good example of listening to what's not said. And so it is a lot about reading facial cues, reading body language, but also when you're expecting a conversation to go a certain way, because most of us do have these scripts or schemas in our head about what's going to happen next. When it violates that expectation, pay attention to it and go, do I need to ask a follow-up question to get some more clarity? Should I let that moment just pass and go forward? So all of those things help with yes, pay attention to what's said, but pay attention to what's not said.
I find these relates very much to situations in which we give a presentation, for example, and we very, very often one of the most common mistakes that I see speakers do is they keep reading their slides, they keep looking at their slides instead of looking at people. Sometimes you just need to realize that the way you planned can't be executed the way you thought about it, and sometimes you just need to shift, change, do something, improvise. And I think this is exactly what you Maegan did, and it makes absolutely sense to me. Listening, once again, one thing that I always say is when we give a presentation, more than a speech, it should be a moment of listening to people, reading what they say, what they don't say, but they actually always say something, especially with the body language. You also you split the book in two sections, right? So there is a first part in which we learn more about us as listeners. So it's a journey of discovery. It has been a journey of discovery for me, where I started to understand, I find myself more in this listening style or in this other listening style. So for those who haven't read the book, the authors, they classify 4 different styles of listening. They call them support, advance, immerse, and discern. And we're going to maybe comment on that, but probably you better do that than me. And It's very interesting because the first part of the book, it's like you discover the way you listen. I love the fact that there is also a test, which I did, in which you can self-assess yourself. And I was surprised because it was different from what I thought reading the book. So I strongly recommend people to read the book and to do the test, because you might be surprised. But the second part of the book, it's mostly about how the others need you, how the others need you to listen. And this is very interesting because in a way it is deploying this listening approach in the way we listen. It's probably a loop, but I find it very fascinating. So how did you decide to develop the book? Why did you decide to structure the book this way?
I will say this took us a while to figure out, because what we inherently love about adaptive listening is it focuses on the other person first. It begs you to ask the question as a listener, what does the speaker need from me right now? So our natural instinct was, we'll start with the person who needs what they need from you, not yourself. And what we know as speaker coaches is you have to know about yourself in order to make a change. So we thought the only way to teach people how to adapt is if they first understand how they're currently behaving and thinking, so that they can know how to pivot and how to make that change. So we had to start with the listener. So yes, the first part is learning all about you, what you're doing right, how you can pivot, and then what that other person needs from you and how you need to adjust. That was our thinking behind that. You can't make a change unless you first know where you're coming from. You got to figure that out first. So that was the impetus there. But it took us a while to be okay with that. We played around with the order and the flow of that book many times before we settled there. Lots of Post-its and stickies all over the place, reorganizing ideas.
It does. Writing a book, it's a journey. It requires a huge amount of energy, huge amount of time, a good quality time. It's not just something you do in between meetings. So I understand, and I'm fascinated about what you created, girls. Really, Nicole, you were saying we need to know how we listen so that we can better adapt to the way people need us to listen, and therefore this journey of discovery in the first part of the book is necessary for us to understand how then we can behave. And it makes absolutely sense to me. I'm thinking you said something that I truly love, which is when you said that sometimes we just need to make it less about us and more about them. But at the end of the day, isn't it the secret of every presentation? What do you think about it?
Yes. At Duarte, we pride ourselves in using empathy to underline every piece of work we do. Every time Maegan and I write a speech, the first question we ask the speaker is, who is your audience? What do they care about? What are they afraid of? And how are you going to change their mind by the time you walk off the stage? We don't think listening should be any different, right? It's checking in with, what does this person need from me right now? How can I give it to them? And then that extends not only on the individual one-on-one trust building basis, but also extends to, well, that creates better teams. That creates better organizations. But when we start by thinking of the other, that's where the trust starts. And so that's the whole thing. It's not about looking like you're listening or letting that person think that you're listening or showing up as if you're listening, right? It's actually doing it. It's actually doing it and considering, what does this person need in this moment? And that can change from moment to moment. So it's constantly asking yourself and reassessing, maybe even within the same meeting, maybe even within that first 30 seconds. And that's hard work. It takes a lot to think about not only the goal of this project, the goal of this team, my personal goals, but also someone else's. Being inherently empathetic all the time in your communication, whether expressive or receptive, is challenging. It's challenging work.
But the question is, why is it? I mean, at the end of the day, right, we are talking about interaction between people. And sometimes it's like, I mean, if I went to a meeting room, right, and I would ask people, I don't know, guys, are you listening? But probably they would nod, say, yes, of course we're listening. But then very often this is not the case. So why is it so hard to listen?
I think it's mostly because if you take active listening and you go and do a search, you're going to get millions of definitions, even though there is a definition from the 50s, but everyone has co-opted it. There are people who've got active listening frameworks, trainings all over the place. But when we started asking people, great, you do active listening. Tell me what it is and how you do it. Silence. It's not easy. It's become it's like the word Kleenex or Q-tips. We all just agree that that thing is that thing. We've assigned the noun and we all say we're doing it. I'm a listener. I've been listening since I was born. It's happening. Okay, but how do you teach a kid who just graduated from high school, who's going to take their first real job, how to be a good listener? You can't wait a decade for them to pick it up. You have to give them practical tools. So I think the lack of a really memorable model that was easy for you to hijack what was going on in your day. Stop the meeting or stop your brain and change. Do something different. I think that's why people don't do it. I just think we all think we're good at it. You don't work on becoming better at walking if you've been walking your whole life, because you do it. I don't practice chewing my food differently because I know how to chew. I'm sure I could be more efficient in my walking and my chewing, but I'm not doing any of that. And I think listening falls into that same category for us. Whereas speaking is very face threatening, very anxiety producing. So people have invested tens of hundreds of millions of dollars into an industry to help people be better speakers. And we don't think of listening the same way. And that means none of us are holding each other accountable for really, really strong listening in the workplace either. I can hold you accountable for a bad presentation because I can give you a feedback score at the end that's like 1 out of 5. Boring, learned nothing. When was the last time someone rated your listening skills after a meeting? Probably didn't happen. Maybe in an end of year review or like a 360 review when you're up for promotion, there's one item that says, do they listen? Are they a good listener? That's it. That's the extent of the feedback. And so because Nicole and I are coaches and trainers and strategists by training, we knew you got to give people something that's easy to remember and you have to actually help them get better at it. And I think that's where the gaps have been so far.
I will add, at least this is the case in the US, but we put such an impetus on expressive communication. In our schooling growing up, we got deducted points for lack of participation. We do not value being quiet in this society. And so we've all, to Megan's point, focused so much on that skill. I think by default, that means we haven't focused on the other skill. And I don't think it's because we don't think it's important. I think it's just that we've put so much pressure on the other side that we have become imbalanced.
I mean, girls, I'm Italian, so you know the kind of interaction that we're famous for. So I couldn't agree more about the importance of interacting with the others. But what really caught my attention in what you were saying is speaking. So training the speaking skills is scary, while training listening skills, it's less scary, or maybe it's not scary at all. Because when you are giving a speech, I mean, you're under pressure, everybody's looking at you, and therefore I understand. And probably this is why, as you mentioned, we've been investing so much on this skill. But what about listening? Apart from the annual review, this is something we never get rated on. And at the same time, I believe that there can't be any good speech without a good listening, right? So even giving a speech is all about how we listen. But you went beyond that and you even defined the way we do that, and you identified 4 different styles, right, of listening. So would you like to tell us about these 4 different styles? Because I think people here who are listening, guys, are you listening? I'm asking now if everybody is listening in the chat. And by the way, if you guys want to prove that you're listening, but if you can ask questions. So if you want to join the conversation, of course, guys, feel free. There is a chat. You can drop a message in the chat. I have it under my eyes. I will share the question with Nicole and Maegan, and you can participate to the call, of course. But what are these 4 listening styles?
we found that it's not that people are listening or not listening. Generally, people are listening. They're just not listening in the way that the person speaking needs them to. So we all come to work with what we're calling a SAID listening style. And SAID is an acronym that stands for support, advance, immerse, discern. You can think of these as your default listening style. When I show up, I am a default discern listener, which means when I show up, my instinct is to evaluate and critique. Blame it on the day job of being a speaker coach, but that is my instinct. So I'm the person who in a brainstorm might be, hold up, have we thought of this red flag, etc. Now, the problem with that is the situation or the person might not need my default style. They might need something else. And so we can go through each of these 4 styles, but that's the deal. You have to show up knowing your style and ask yourself, is this the style this person needs right now? Or do I need to adapt to a different style to give them what they need? So support listeners show up being super focused on the person. They are very concerned about every voice being heard, about others contributing. They get really upset if folks move on too quickly when every voice in the room has not contributed. Megan, you want to sort of ping pong these advanced?
Yeah, so I will bring up advanced because I'm an advanced listener by default, which means when I am listening, I am always processing with the idea of what needs to move forward next. How can I get this person unstuck? How can I solve this problem that's happened? How can I make sure the good, smart thinking in this room gets leveraged in another room down the way? And in a lot of ways, that has served me well in my career because I am an executive communication strategist. I am talking to people who don't have a lot of time, who hired me to solve their problems. So my brain has become wired to always be like, I can solve it this way, I can solve it this way. Let me get you to do this. We do this next, we'll get to the finish line. That's where I'm always going. But that becomes a massive problem in rooms that aren't ready to move forward that fast, or where there's just no good reason for us to move that fast. There's a lot of places in life where there's no reason to try to rush through the thing, that there is a good reason to sit with support or sit with discern. So I have to check myself. Is the thing that I want to do by my default the thing that's going to serve this person who's talking to me or this group of people who's talking to me, or is it not? And then the last one is immerse listening. And this is the one that's the closest to active listening, which is listening so that you understand and remember. And especially at the workplace, there are a lot of conversations that happen where you need to remember the facts. There's nothing for you to do with them today. There is no action for you to take. But you need to remember that IT is pushing an update next week so that when your computer shuts down, you remember it was going to shut down and you don't have to freak out and send IT an email and go, oh my gosh, what happened to my computer? Well, they told you it was going to be shut. Did you not listen? They said it. Clock it, put it in your head, remember it. So across the board, you've got your support listeners who are really good at focusing on emotion. You've got your advanced listeners who are focusing on forward motion. You've got your immersed listeners who are focusing on understanding and remembering, and your discern listeners who are evaluating the situation. We need all of them in the workplace. There are certain situations that would call for all of them. But what we think the magic of adaptive listening is, that's how you listen. All 4 of those words are the same as the goals. What does someone need from you? So if I'm an advanced listener, do they need advanced listening? Yeah, we nailed it. Fantastic meeting. We got to the finish line. But if I'm an advanced listener and they needed immerse and I pushed them forward when they didn't want that, I'm going to get friction. I'm going to get tension, conflict. Maybe they don't even say it out loud, and probably they don't. They probably don't tell me they didn't like the way I listened because they have no vocabulary for it. But something's going to feel off, and that might have a ripple effect on the next project and the next one and the next one, and we don't want that. So the whole book, front half teaches you how you listen, second half teaches you how to listen other people need, because that's what we want you to do, adapt. Map what they need to the way that you listen. So we want people to be able to do all of them by the time they're done with the book.
I think acknowledging the way we listen, the way the others need us to listen, but also the way the others can or could be listening to us is most of the work that we need to do to improve our conversations and our relationships within our organizations. Because sometimes, I mean, I think we've all been to the point in which we called a colleague or a boss, and maybe he or she didn't listen the way we were expecting, and we felt kind of frustrated. Maybe I just didn't want to know how to solve the problem. I just wanted to share the problem with this person. Sometimes I expected somebody to just take notes and then be ready, but then maybe I discovered that they didn't, and maybe they come up with pros and cons, but this was not what I was expecting. So I think these situations are quite familiar to everyone listening, but I also believe that the moment I started reading it, the moment I read the first part, first of all, I understood about myself. So I caught myself sometimes listening the wrong way. And so you kind of say, well, okay, so I might need to switch to better adapt to what people need. But then how do I understand? How can I understand which one should be the most effective, in a way, style of listening in a specific situation? How do I understand from the others, probably, which listening style I shall better adopt, or they need me to adopt?
Yeah, a lot of this is based on past experience. And so I'll give you an example. I had a manager several years ago who I recognized a pattern every time I went to her. And I will say, I'm the kind of person who likes to tackle work problems myself. If I can go directly to the person that I'm having tension with, I will do that. And I will do my best to figure out that situation directly with that person. Sometimes it doesn't work and I need to go to a manager. I had a manager who every time I went to her, she would say something like, oh, that's so hard. That's really challenging. And so after a while, I recognized this pattern. Like, if I want this manager to do something about this problem, I'm going to have to say so. Because I recognized in working with this person over and over again that all they want to do, perhaps their default, is support listening. So I'm going to have to show up there and either say, so-and-so, this is what I need from you right now because I've recognized a pattern, or I go to someone else. Right? So part of this is based on experience. Before you walk into a room, you can ask yourself, what does this person typically need from me? In my past interactions, when we're doing a brainstorm, what has that interaction been like? And you can use past information to make a decision about what that person might need this time. While you're practicing, sometimes it's okay to ask. This is a journey. We're all Maegan and I are still working on this. We now have senior leaders, and I really appreciate this, who show up to meetings with me and say, Nicole, how would you like me to listen today? And I say, I need advanced listening. I need you to make a decision, right? Eventually, as we get to know the language and as we get to know people and their preferences, we won't have to ask that question. But the intention is what matters here, right? And so I think we can just do a better job across the board in communication, expressive or receptive, assuming that the person has good intention. If you show up and you do the wrong thing, that's okay. Just own it. If you have to ask because you don't know, that's okay. Try that, right? It's all better for the purposes of better communication across the board. So you're gonna get it wrong, and that's okay. But if you have the intention of showing up with, I care about this person and I want to give them what they need, that's what really counts right now.
You know, your question is funny to me because Nancy Duarte asked us the same question when we were halfway through this research project. So we come up with these styles. We're like, there are these styles. They map to these goals. So just listen the way the person needs. And she's like, okay, but how? How will I know? And I'm like, well, you just do it. What do you mean? Just do it. Because at that point, Nicole and I are decades into being listeners as consultants, as coaches. We're in this work. So it now seems obvious to us. And she was like, I don't understand what you want me to do differently, though. And I'm like, oh, that's how the whole second half of the book got written, is that we had to go back to our research, back to our interviews, and back to testing to go, how do you know when someone needs support versus advance? Because they're not going to have read the book. They're not going to tell you. What do? You know what? People need support listening when they're in a heightened, uncomfortable emotion. So I've actually snuck ahead and looked at the chat at the question we were just asked about someone in a boardroom meeting, sort of monopolizing the conversation and pushing everyone in another direction. I'd say that person's in a heightened, uncomfortable emotion. Something's not right. Maybe that person feels undervalued. Maybe that person feels neglected. Maybe that person feels they don't have a lot of confidence in their own work, so they take over. Usually, when people take over that aggressively, it's usually what the problem is. That person needs more emotional validation so that they stop overtaking everyone in the room. That person would never know they needed support listening. There's no way a person who acts like that in a boardroom is like, I really wish someone would validate my emotions. No way. That's never going to happen. But you start to become this really in tune communicator who can read the room and go, oh my gosh, this person is lacking something, which is the only reason they're acting out like this in a meeting of grown-ups who are all smart trying to do their jobs. You know what I need to give them? I need to give them a thank you so much for bringing that up. That is going to make us smarter, but it's going to send us down a rabbit hole we don't have time for today. I want to write that down, deal with that later, and I want to take us back to what we said the goal of this meeting was. So now you have this internal framework to use to go, I'm going to validate you, I'm going to park it, we're going to move it forward because that's what the room needs. And I think adaptive listening just gives you an internal framework and some mechanisms. So if you get to the second half of the book, you're going to see that for every one of these 4 goals, we mapped out common situations where obviously that's the right listening to do. Like you don't have to do any reading of the room. When you show up as a new hire to onboarding and orientation, you're an immerse listener. That's it. That's all you got to do. You're not advancing. You're not critiquing. You don't have to give a massive emotional support. Just remember everything that you heard in onboarding. But then there's a series of complex situations where it is harder for you to deduce what does the person or the room need from me right now? And I really think that that's where the book is its weight in gold. All right. This is where you really become a better communicator, is starting to read the room and go, oh, is there so much urgency and are the stakes so high I should just fix this problem for them because I'm a leader and I know the answer? Or do we have time and this is a learning opportunity, so I'm not going to tell them how to fix it. I'm going to make them do it themselves. That type of assessing yourself in the moment, that's what you're working towards. That's the end state we're trying to get you to as you start practices at work so that you can get the benefits of adaptive listening without needing everyone in your organization to read it, without needing your boss to be a really, really great listener. You can kind of push them there when you know these things and you have these tactics for you that the book give you.
And this is where I believe that the framework plays a crucial role, because then we have a guideline to follow, and we can frame different situations, and we know, oh, okay, this is exactly what happens, what's happening, so I can read the situation, and I know that I should probably switch or push them to switch to a different style, but the framework for us then becomes a real guideline to, let's say, decipher a situation, read the situation, understand what should be done in the shortest amount of time as possible. And so my next question would be, have you noticed that spreading the framework within teams, across teams, or within the same organization, improved the overall interaction? Because I mean, of course, if I read it, it will help me. So in, let's say, in a selfish way, I'm using this word, in a selfish way, of course, it's useful to me. But my question is, but I also believe that this would be helpful to everyone else working with me, not just to me. Does it make sense?
Yes, I think one of the things that we encourage folks to do is try to plot the listening styles of others so that you can understand perhaps why that meeting was so tense, right? And maybe it's because that person is always giving this type of listening and that's not what the situation needs. So we encourage you not only to do some self-exploration on yourself as a listener, what is your default said listening style, but what might others be as well? And that just brings a little more empathy and understanding to the situation. And then you can make a choice, right? You can say, hey, I know you tend to be an advanced listener. In this meeting, we need discernment, right? Here's what we need. And you can have an open dialogue when you all know that language and you share it to set the stage for more productive interactions. Like that's the lovely part of having teams go through this. But the really interesting thing that we've encountered as we've talked to customers about our adaptive listening workshop, When we get into a conversation with customers and we try to uncover what their problem is and how we can help solve it, I don't think once have we had a buyer say, we have a listening problem. No one identifies their team has a listening problem. It's there's tension in the room, or we're not getting projects done quickly enough. We are not efficient. Well, Megan and I know as communication experts, you probably have a listening problem. But the first part is sort of admitting that that's where the problem is coming from. They identify it more as inefficiencies and tension and culture problems than they do for listening. So I think first understanding that your problem might be a listening problem is really helpful in moving teams forward. But not a lot of people figure that out. So.
As you get to the end of the book, you'll see that we use our own organization, Duarte, as a case study, because whenever we bring a body of work out to the world, we test it internally a ton, which means every single person in our company knows their said listening style and has been to multiple trainings on how to be a better adaptive listener. And the place where this shows up the most, I think, is with our executive team. So Nancy really took hold to our framework very quickly. She said it's changed her life with her son, but also with her executive meetings, because she believed as the CEO, when she walked into the executive meeting, her job, and she's an advanced Discern listener, her job was to always move them forward on the next thing. So she'd go away on a vacation, she'd come back from a break, and they'd be giving her updates on what they did while she was gone. And in reality, all they needed her to do was immerse and support, but all she would do was discern in advance. And so now they have the language as a group where they can, like Nicole said, hey, what do you want from me now? But also they're now just more aware that maybe this thing I want to do isn't what's going to serve this moment. Let me take a beat. And that's really what we're trying to do, is interrupt what you normally would do to do a quick check internally by yourself. And eventually it becomes a little bit more habitual and automatic. I think this is what it's parallels to, wouldn't it be great if every organization gave a lean presentation? Wouldn't our life be better if they presented data visually that told stories? It would. One of the best ways to get there is to get a few people to start to do it, and then other people get jealous and then go, why is yours better than mine? Why are your meetings going better than mine? Why are your team scores higher than mine? And all of a sudden you might be able to build a little bit of momentum without saying, hey, go read this book I read. That's harder to do, but it's easier to practice it yourself, show up, and start to see the benefits happen at a team, department, and then eventually organization level.
I would probably dare to say that this is something that every leader should learn, should acknowledge. Because what you said about Nancy, I think being an advanced listener, I think very often when I talk, interact with leaders, they always are in that mood. So maybe this is because their role, or maybe because they think their role, but at the end of the day, sometimes they just don't need to be that advanced listener to actually being even more effective than what they thought they could be. So I would dare to say that this should be like a key skill for everyone growing up to be a leader, leading people, leading organizations, because I think it makes a huge difference. And it builds empathy, and it creates a better impact on the organization, on the people you actually lead. But then the question that comes to my mind is, can it be weaponized? I'm using a bad word, but like we work in communication. We know about persuasion. We know about nudging and all these kind of terms, right? And so my question is, can it be, let's say, can it be used, I don't know, bending the rules of communication in a way that influences people the wrong way? Has it happened to you, or have you ever thought about it?
I think it absolutely can. I think it's probably less likely than someone using traditional persuasion to manipulate. I think that's a lot more likely, since we know people spend more time in crafting their expressive communication anyway. And they know, like, there are persuasive tools, psychological tools that you can do. Yes, you could fake be an adaptive listener, but that would mean you're going to say, what do I think this person needs from me right now? And I'm going to give it to them. Okay. Is that the worst thing that could happen? Like that's the manipulation tactic? All right. Yeah, there could be some nefarious reason you're doing it to really get your way at the end. But I think if you looked at that on the whole, it's still going to play out in the benefit of the human on the other end. Hopefully, it still plays out into the benefit of society at large. If you're listening with what do I think someone needs, I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to hope that it would start to seed in the mind and body of that nefarious person to eventually become more empathetic and go, wait a minute, what am I doing with my life? Maybe I should stop doing things for the wrong reasons and just do them for the right reasons, and then things will go better.
One cautionary tale I do have is it's similar to those of you who are familiar with Enneagram. When some people get their Enneagram number, they really glob onto it and they'll say something like, I'm a proud 6. Well, no, the idea around Enneagram is no one can tell what your number is. That's the same thing with adaptive listening. So the danger here is finding out what your said listening style is and being super proud of it. Like, I am a proud Discern listener. Well, sometimes that works, but I don't want to hold on to it so tightly because, again, the idea here is I'm such an adaptive listener, no one can tell what my said listening style is. So I don't want to come into, adaptive listening with a sense of pride on my default. That might prevent me from adapting. So that's the little bit of caution there. It's like, yeah, just because my default is Discern, 1, it doesn't mean I'm always good at it. And 2, it doesn't mean I use it the right way at the right time. So I would say that's where things can get a little bit tricky. Learn your style, but pivot quickly from it. Don't glob onto it. I think there's a little bit of danger there.
And this is something you stress out very much in the book, like, okay, find your style, but then learn how to pivot to the other style. Because at the end of the day, this is the key, right?
Yes.
Wondering what the others would need from me. It's also the second part of the book, and it's key here to bringing listening truly on the table. I have one last question that I can't not ask today because it's about artificial intelligence nowadays. This is, of course, related. But at least one question about AI must be asked, I think, in our interviews. At least I'm sure you're used to that. But actually, what I want it's more a challenge. What I'm saying is, AI is getting better and better at generating what to say. But don't you think that listening is becoming the last truly human competitive advantage?
Well, I do. Here, I'm biased, right? But I'm going to say yes. And here's why. Part of the reason we wrote this book is because the flow of communication during the workday is so fast and it can change quickly. Someone says something in a room and you're like, whoa, I didn't think about that. I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't have a reaction to that. Right now, we don't have AI good enough that in real time could read my micro expression, the change in the tone of my voice, in addition to the words I say, or maybe what I didn't say. How is the AI going to know what to do if I don't say anything? It needs an input. I'm not giving it any input. A human can right now use all the variables to code what is going on and then shoot a response out. So I think we would have a while to go until real-time reading of all of the cues a human could give off would allow you to go back and forth that quickly. I mean, I think AI still assumes we only function logically. No, we're emotional creatures who do things for our own emotional reasons all of the time that have nothing to do with logic. That's not coded into the algorithms in the same way that a logical if then is coded into them. So I don't know that we'll have forever to wait until it catches up. But for right now, we're at a moment of time where if you can sharpen your listening skills, which is a human skill, that's going to set you apart from people who are letting the good communication work atrophy because they've decided to over rely or outsource all of it to AI. I say that as someone who uses AI 4 hours a day. Okay, so I am not an anti-AI person. I'm just letting you know there's a give and take, there's a back and forth, there's a cost. I think listening could be the place where you've got time to create the gap between your average communicator and your exceptional communicator.
At the end of the day, I think that I'm also using AI very much in my job. But at the end of the day, a presentation or a moment, an interaction, which somebody speaking, somebody hopefully listening. At the end of the day, even the presentation itself is a way to shake hands with another person and agree on something. At the end of the day, this is what we're trying to do here, whether we're selling a project, approving a budget, or doing whatever we're trying to do in business, or even not in business, not necessarily. But the idea is enhancing the interaction in a way that helps everybody. Maybe a presentation is something that helps everybody to listen. And if they are capable of listening and they're aware of how they can be better listeners, well, then even presentations will be more effective for everyone.
Absolutely.
Right, girls, we are heading towards the end of the time. I would love to keep talking to you, and I'm very pleased we had this amazing conversation. I once again recommend everyone to check this book out, because it's been really eyes-opening for me, and it really shifts the perspective. It's something completely new in our world, and I think it's really worth it. So now I'm going to head back to Laura. First of all, I want to thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Maegan, for being with us. It's been an amazing journey, and I wish you all the best with your book. And I'm keeping following you and reading your contents.